and unfortunately, probably not with a side-by-side recording, but we're doing our best. Okay, we're doing our
We'll
best.
figure it out as we go. We get better each time.
Yeah, hopefully. We don't want the opposite to happen.
Oh no.
Um, so yeah, before I forget, I do want to talk about um I kept meaning to bring it up last time, and it always is like a good thing to talk about professionalism and like why it's crap.
Mhm.
But when I was in my first full-time faculty job, this was a comment on a student evaluation, and it was clearly somebody who I'm trying to phrase this in the best way because the learner's not wrong, but somebody who either did not agree to the standards that we had set for the course, maybe didn't complete things in a timely manner, didn't uphold their part of the bargain, as far as the agreement of being a student and
Mhm.
following deadlines and, meeting requirements. So butthurt is maybe what someone might loosely say. Um, because occasionally that will happen. In this comment, though, I had to do a lot of recorded lectures. And so, because it was an asynchronous program, I had to do like a here's my face while I'm talking with the PowerPoints. And, we all know how ineffective that can actually be, but that's what we have to do. Um, and on the feedback, this student had said, which understandably, this was during like the pandemic. And after I had received approval from my chair that my hair could be whatever color I wanted it to be, I
Mhm.
went full pink, like bright
Mhm.
neon pink. I had bright blue at one point. I had teal. I had like every
Mhm.
color possible. And so one of these comments was the hair color that Dr. Arnold has is very unprofessional. Um, which I was like, okay, sure, like you're a product of your environment. Like this is
Mhm.
something that people teach, like tattoos are bad, piercings, visible facial
Yeah.
piercings are bad. Um, I did like two or three CEU presentations when I had like funky colored hair. And I actually had people commenting, like, I am so happy that somebody with credentials is posing in this way because it inspires me to just be myself. And that's kind of been a cool thing, but it comes up occasionally. But the one that really got me was another student had commented, first off, you shouldn't be commenting on someone's appearance, in my opinion.
Yeah. I
Period.
agree.
That's off limits.
Yeah.
But this other comment that I had was her hair is very unkempt. And my first thought was you would never say that to a black woman. And if you would, oh my God, that's awful because that's racist. And so, like, my hair is wavy, it's curly, it does whatever the hell it wants to. It's not
Mhm.
like as curly or coiled and beautiful as I would love for it to be, but this is just, it is what it is. And it's like, I literally can't help my hair texture.
Yeah. That
So,
sounds like they were like your mom or something like, or maybe their mom had said that to them multiple times, especially using that phrase, that
yeah.
word unkempt.
Right. And I was like, what a strange word. Like, I could see messy being used. I
Hmm.
could see wild being used. Unkempt, I was like, okay, first off, this is probably an older student. There's a lot of bias there.
Hmm.
You've had a lot of experience, but I just thought, I've been reading a lot about intersectional feminism. And so being a woman, and trying to help acknowledge the struggle of other women who don't look like me. I was like, that really angers me. Like, who has the audacity to comment on a woman's physical appearance like that? I don't know. It made me wonder if my skin were a different color, would you have still said that? And if so, you need to reflect on why.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. So, like, if you're a student, please don't comment on people's appearances because, like, really, that's so tacky.
It's
I don't
never
know.
appropriate. We shouldn't be commenting on their appearance. They shouldn't be commenting on our appearance. I
No,
mean, especially in the
no.
teacher eval, because that stuff is, it's there for a long time, you know what I mean? And it's very concerning. And it goes to the whole back thing of like what is professionalism,
Yeah.
one, and then two, I'm allowed to wear my hair the way that I desire to wear it. And
Yes.
I can still have all of the information you need to learn to be able to be good at what I'm trying to teach you. The hair does nothing to prevent the teaching or the learning to happen in this instance. And that's the parameters with which we should be concerned. When we're outside of those parameters, we're outside of what is okay.
Right. And hilariously enough, the student had nothing to say about my content or my, guidance as an instructor. It's like, okay, so, and at some point, I'm sure
Yeah.
we will really break down like evaluations and stuff. And
Hmm.
as far as what we should listen to and really take seriously as far as feedback, there's a time and a place to step away from that feedback.
Hmm.
Um, but that's like a firm line that I don't think anybody should cross. And like you said, that doesn't speak to our experiences, that doesn't speak to our knowledge, our what we can
Exactly.
contribute, and as far as your education is concerned. And my God, like it just got me thinking, like, well, what should I look like? What what is the idea here? Like, should it be just straight, curled at the end? Like,
Yeah.
what does that even mean? Like,
And
so
I think that
yeah,
if we put our behavior science brains on, we would think, okay, what is the verbal behavior and the verbal community and the history that reinforces or elicits or evokes this behavior? Because we
yeah,
got to think about, okay, so this person is probably older, probably set in environments where they either heard that from someone else or and they were told it to them, or so you can
right,
learn by observation, by reinforcement, by punishment. So all of those things are happening. So I think that one cool thing about our science is we're kind of able to break that down and be like, okay, so clearly you're involved in a verbal community that those are their values, one, and two, it's okay to say that. And then three, somebody said that to somebody else, and you, for whatever reason, remember it.
hmm
So that's really cool about verbal behavior, but also it means that we need to work on our verbal community. I mean, it's the same with stuff that it's like, oh, that's not racist. That's just blah blah blah. It's like, no, that's racist. And your verbal community may have reinforced it in the past, but we're not doing that here. You know what I mean? So
right.
I think that that's definitely a learning opportunity, especially like if you have like sometimes you'll have students for one semester and then you'll have that same group of students the next term or semester. So
hmm
it's like if you said that then and I read those evals, I'm coming back and we might have to address some of these evals because not only do I want to be a better professor the next term or semester, but also we're going to need to talk about this.
If it were a situation where I knew I was going to have that same student, I would have absolutely doubled down and like made my hair like Liberty spikes or something. I would have absolutely. And the thing is, like, I've been very, very fortunate to have the most amazing chairs at both of the jobs that I've had teaching so far. And my last chair would have just thought it was hilarious. She would have been like, absolutely, you go for that. Just thriving on spite and snark, like a hundred
Yep.
percent.
Yep.
Um, but she was also at this point of teaching for so long that she's just like, you know what? Whatever. You do
Yeah. I
you.
don't care. F it.
So yeah, I kind of wanted to throw that out there. And I went ahead and added some books that I recently read. I was sick all last week, and so I was fortunate enough to have some time. I'm gonna use that as an opportunity for reframe to do some reading I wanted to do. So I added like the intersectional feminism book that I had read and loved. So good. But yeah, I added those to the resources as well. But anyway, we
Perfect.
wanted to talk about something that was recent with you. So, care to
Oh,
share?
yeah. So recently I submitted a manuscript to the journal. First of all, your teacup,
Oh,
I love it. Britney Spears. She
yeah.
was actually my first crush.
Oops, I
I
did it
remember
again.
I was exactly in second grade. It was on top of a mound
Second
of tan
grade.
bark,
It's like a
and
junior
somebody
high.
brought, yeah, sorry.
It's
Someone
okay.
brought her CD. I'm in second grade, someone brought her
Baby,
CD.
one more
So
time.
And maybe not my first crush because I mean I'm sure there was like the Goofy movie and all that stuff that I
Oh
was
God, the
watching,
Goofy movie.
or the extremely Goofy movie. And
Oh,
so someone brought her a CD and I saw her and I was like, I don't know what it is. I like that.
that side sit and the little head
Yeah,
prop and yep, I
yeah. And
yeah,
I was of the
Bay.
age, at least second
Yeah,
grade,
that
to
was
like
your
that.
awakening.
Yeah. Um, but so what I want to say is, so I submitted a manuscript back to the topic. I submitted a manuscript to the Journal of School Psychology, and
Mhm.
super excited. It all went through, and the last thing it was telling me is like, hey, if you want to make this manuscript open access, it's going to cost $3,000. Now, that is about the average rate it
Mhm.
costs to make a manuscript or any publication open access if the journal doesn't already do it themselves. I've noticed that a lot of medical journals just make them open access. When I do a lot of research for some of my content in medical journals, it's just open access. I don't need to even use my university email. So I love that for them. But for
Yeah.
us, this will be my third publication where I'm first author. Imagine that's three, six, $9,000 out of pocket
Yeah.
to be able to make sure that this content, this information is accessible to everyone. And
Yeah.
to remove that barrier of needing a university email or being able to
Hmm.
just pay for the article. And I have a huge problem with it because it just makes us preach to the choir and it doesn't get the information out there because who do I want to read this article? This article is about inner behavior, thoughts, feelings, and urges, and being able to measure and change them across time. So I want pretty much everybody to be able to read them, not just
Yeah.
school psychologists, but also the people that actually need to be able to do that. So it really frustrates me. And I emailed the university to say, hey, can you eat this cost so that I don't have to come out of my pocket to be able to make this happen? So we'll see if that can happen. I know my at Penn State they said that they would, but it takes a while. And that
Yeah.
time between when it's published and when they actually give you the money or give the money to be able to do that, I don't know how long that is. And that's however long it is, it's too long, especially going through
Yeah.
all the channels. So, I mean, I just hate it. And it really prevents us from getting the information out there.
It, you basically summarized what I consider gatekeeping all around.
It
And
is.
publishing to me is almost synonymous with gatekeeping now. And it's tragic because it's like you said, like we're missing out on information that we could benefit from. And I don't know, it's just another system of privilege. And so $3,000, which is, as you said, the average for open access publication, that is not chump change. Like that I'm in a less expensive area, but that's like, 2 months rent where I'm at for like a decent sized apartment or home. Um, it might be like 1 month of rent for where you're at. But I mean that's a lot of money. Like most people, if you stopped them on the street and said, "Hey, right now, how much money is in your bank account? Don't take this weird." They would probably not be able to say, "Oh yeah, I could easily fit the 3 grand needed to pay for that."
Exactly. And it's just really frustrating because it's like we want people to read our research. I mean, we don't just write it for
Yeah,
or publish it for nothing. And then as soon as I publish, I want to make a video being like, hey, go check this out. But then, if it's not available because it's behind a paywall, people are gonna immediately ask, like, hey, how do I access it? Can you email it to me? And I'm somebody who is going to be like, hey, I don't know if I'm allowed to email it to you, but if you send me your email, it might just fall in there from, random email address. But
yeah,
because I mean, I know on ResearchGate, you could have it so that it attaches your name to the publication, and then people can message you through ResearchGate to email to ask to email the article. So
Hmm.
even, sometimes even if you do have all the credentials to be able to access the article, it's still behind a paywall. And I've done
Absolutely.
research where you're trying to like get, oh, this is the perfect article. This abstract is gonna exactly help me be able to say this sentence. And then it's behind a
Yeah.
paywall. And it's like, okay, how about my university access? No. And I have two university emails. So I have,
Right.
my Penn State one and my Chicago school one. So I'm like, hey, can I get
Yeah.
through either way? And then there, sometimes yeah, you can, sometimes you can't, and it's just so
Hmm.
frustrating.
Well, and at one point I had like done a deep dive into this because I'm like, okay, so if articles are behind a paywall and if you have to pay, I want to be fully clear, by the way, authors for academic journals do not get paid,
No,
period.
no,
And so, like, some students will come and they'll be like, I'm okay paying for an article if it supports the authors. I'm like, wait, that's BS because we don't get paid shit.
no.
And so, like, you're not only you're doing this as basically an expectation of productivity, which is a capitalist construct and gross, I might add. Um,
Mhm,
you're also asking for research for marginalized groups that are underrepresented, which, like disability, race, gender, all these different areas that we really need representation in, but we're also
mhm,
exploiting those marginalized classes by not paying for that labor.
mhm,
So the money I actually found goes to the publishing company or the organization. So when you pay Java, for instance, for an article, it's going to the people at the editorial board of Java. Now, I don't know about you, but I have peer reviewed for journals and I have peer reviewed for Java. I have peer reviewed for behavior analysis, research, and practice. I've peer reviewed for a lot of different
mhm.
prominent journals in this field. And I also want to go back to the question, are you talking about just ABA disciplinary journals, or are you talking education, ABA, et cetera, the umbrella?
Me?
Yeah, when you were talking about,
Well, this one was
the,
for journal of school psychology. Yeah, school psychology. So
okay, so it's
this is not even an
psychology.
ABA journal. So, and in the
Right.
ABA journal, it was also around $3,000 as well. So, I mean, this
Mhm.
is seems like the going rate.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah,
I would even argue that within ABA, it's even more gate kept. So
yeah.
you not only have, and we can talk more about that, but that money goes to the people, not who are peer reviewing even. It's going
Hmm.
to whoever's in charge, and I don't know what kind of publication costs there would be because no one reads actual print journals anymore, I think. It's
Yeah,
all digital.
yeah,
So, like, where is that money actually going? What is it
yeah.
actually serving? So, you should be asking these questions because students generally don't know this. And they come in and I'm like, no, it's a labor of love to publish and to do research. It is nothing past that. And if nothing else, we have to pay to get our
Hmm.
content out there. And we are also paying with labor and time and all of this. So, I think it's really important to start with that.
Exactly. And I don't know if you said it explicitly just now, but as a reviewer, you don't get paid.
Mhm.
As so, like, you can
Nope.
say, oh, it's peer reviewed. We are the peers that might be reviewing the paper. So,
Hi. For
and
better or for worse.
for better or for worse. And I've seen some great papers go through with minor revisions or no revisions, rarely no revisions. And then I've seen
Yeah,
some papers
no.
and it's like, I don't know if this is your first language, so maybe we should work on this a little bit. Or, also, what's going on here? Did you read out loud
That's
what
more
you
important to
wrote?
me. What's actually
Yeah.
happening?
So I'm trying to follow it critically. So yeah, so there's all that. And even there's sometimes even a processing fee just to submit.
Hmm.
So before we even talk about it being open access, you might even have to pay a processing fee to submit the article. So there's so much you have to pay. And then I'm not even talking about the reviewers. Once the reviewers get your paper, they're going to tear
Oh
it to
my God.
shreds, and you're going to spend
Literally.
so much time trying to edit and fix, and your mental health is going to go down for that amount of time. And like literally, I have amnesia every time. So it's like I completely block out my mind how bad it was going through that
Yeah.
process by the time I'm finished with it. And that's only so that I can do it again because I wouldn't do it again or more if I realized like like sometimes it's like you get feedback. It's like I don't want to do that. This is how I want to say this, and I think it's important that I say it like this. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's frustrating.
I can definitely concur with, I've had some really brutal comments on manuscripts. As a reviewer, I want to be explicitly clear, and when I like provide feedback to students, I remember some of those really terrible comments that have been given to me about like things that shouldn't matter, like my tone in a manuscript and like crap that it's like, first off, maybe I just don't understand because autism brain, but like, how can one's tone in a manuscript come across on a paper? But I digress. So I'm really cautious and mindful when I do reviews and when I give feedback to students. So like that's one thing that's really helped shape my behavior as an instructor and as somebody who does those peer reviews because I'm like, I don't want to be that jerk. I don't want to be the
Hmm.
one who discourages and scares someone away from doing something that they're really excited about potentially doing. But those reviews can be scathing. Like, I've literally been told before, you need to give up on this because it's not an area that we need to be going into. And these comments are only from ABA journals, I want to add.
Yeah.
I've had really positive experiences going outside of ABA. Like I've published in just a general disability journal, the Journal of Developmental Disabilities, or I can't remember exactly what. It's been years ago at this
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
But not ABA specific, but will dabble in some ABA. Um, and then I've done visual impairment and blindness, the Journal of Visual Impairment and Blindness. And then I'm trying to think of what else. But yeah, I have maybe had one manuscript published in an ABA journal out of several. And the comments that I've always had when I start in ABA journals are just brutal. And then when I
Yeah.
go to another discipline, they're like, this is great. We would suggest maybe doing this, 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 but it's phrased in a way that's not like holier than thou. And if you want
Hmm.
to talk about tone, let's turn that mirror back on you
Yeah.
because it's not nice. I don't know how
No,
else to say that. It's just really cruel.
I agree. And a long timer told me once, she said, I wish we went back to the days where it was not anonymous reviewing
Oh God,
because
yes.
that really changes the way that people respond to you. Especially if it's like, if someone tells me, "Oh, you should quote Van. Why didn't you quote Van?" It's like, I am Van. Like,
I mean, I
um,
could quote myself, I guess, but that looks weird.
exactly, exactly. Hold on one second. I gotta let my dog into the room
No,
real
you're
quick.
fine.
Trey, come on, come on, go. All right, sorry. So
Oh, you're
no, and
good.
then yeah, I'm really excited to publish outside of ABA. Can we just do a little ABA poo-pooing real quick?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always down
I
for that.
Yeah. I I'm very aware of where the field is and where it isn't, and where I am and where I'm not, and what I know, and what I believe would benefit the field, and what I know would benefit the field, and what I want to do, especially with precision teaching. And they're so turned off to a lot of the really good and important data that I'm able to provide, and they straight up don't know or understand a lot of this basics of Skinner's rate of response. And it's so frustrating. So it's like, why am I going to be here? I should probably go to education or special education, or
Right.
like I am right now, the Journal of School Psychology, because I
Hmm.
feel like they would benefit more from it at times, even when I'm in the field of ABA. When I was looking for jobs, I wanted really to go more into special education than ABA, just because I felt like the wealth of knowledge that I had would be more beneficial to people in special education. So just, ABA always be really pissing me off. And they're like, I always have this thing. It's like, well, I am a board certified behavior analyst, and a lot of the content I do isn't just straight up What is reinforcement? What is punishment? And I feel like that's so boring. Like, let's get deeper. Like, that's a master's. I mean, it's fine, but it's just like a basic understanding. It's
Yeah.
like, let's talk about response. Well, I was like, no, bro, let's go deeper. Let's talk about what the real world issue is, and then let's break it down via our lens of behavior science.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
You're talking about the difference between acquisition and fluency here, and
yeah.
to speak in precision teaching terms. And so, like,
Hmm.
it's like I tell my students, you acquire these terms, you acquire these like basic concepts, but I want to see how you build on those concepts. How do you apply them? Like, it's like that
Hmm.
disconnect between critical thinking of using the concepts. And so that's what our field misses.
Yeah,
100%. It's like, well,
yeah.
I can tell you what Cooper says reinforcement is, and I absolutely
Hmm.
love your what's reinforcement because that's exactly how it is. It's like we have
Hmm.
this watered down, weird, rigid approach to this science that, but you're not actually applying it. Like, it's great that you're
Exactly.
going into your ABA clinic with autistic learners and doing discrete trials, I guess, but
Hmm.
like, how does it actually fit in their lives? How do you actually use it in a socially valid way? How can you like describe these critical connections? So yeah, there's definitely a huge disconnect there, and it's no different with publication. It becomes
Hmm.
so quickly an echo chamber, especially in ABA journals.
Yeah.
There's such resistance to go outside of what replication is already
Hmm.
doing.
Hmm. I agree. And not to switch gears, but I would just had this thought. I saw this
Mhm.
post that was talking about in 2026, these are some of the terms in disability that need to go. And one of them was special needs.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, because he was talking about what do you mean special needs? It makes it sound like my needs are different. Everybody has different needs, and
Mhm.
everybody has needs. And
Yeah.
why do you have to call mine special needs? And I was like, yeah, I agree. And then one of my followers, who is a mutual of mine, she's like been in disability justice for a long time. She said, "What do you think about the term special education?" And I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah.
And then she's like,
I'm not
yeah,
a fan.
because yeah, exactly. Because it's like, it seems like my education has to be different. When I was like, I have my PhD in special education. You know what I mean? It's good for us to be able, as clinicians or practitioners, to be able to describe what's happening. But
Mhm.
I don't think that it's a good term to be used because it makes it feel like somebody has to have something super different. And what she said is she likes adapted education better, and I agreed
Individualized
with her.
education,
And and
accessible
and
education.
and then that goes to the thing of where I feel like every single student should have adapted education, should have
Oh yeah.
specialized, because I like to call it specialized education. Um, and then I feel like if I had my druthers, every student would have an IEP so that we can be
Yeah.
able to target specific goals for that student based on where they come in, and then we try to hit those goals, and then we can measure them across time to see if there's desirable change. That would be how I think that we should be doing it, because that's the only way we can really know if there's improvement across time.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. I am anti-standardized measurement systems. I'm anti a one size fits all, no child left behind
Hmm.
BS. 100%. But I'm also a precision teacher. So I think you and I are
Yeah.
very similar in the whole um, no student is taught in the same way. No student receives information the same way. Everybody has their own strengths and opportunities and but yeah, as far as like disability advocacy and everything, the term special ed and special needs have definitely been on the radar for a while. And
Yeah.
that's the thing is I just feel like it's just education. Like
Yeah.
why
It's
can't we
all
just call it
education.
that? And eventually we're going to look back and like you mentioned your degree is in special education. Eventually we're going to look back
Hmm.
and be like, "Ooh, that term." I'm
Yeah.
hoping but understanding that that's the system and the
Hmm.
structure of the system, obviously it's not your fault. But this is something that we will look back on and be like, oh, maybe we should revisit this. I don't know. That's
Exactly.
my hope is one day
And
we'll look back and be like, ugh.
yeah, and I think that one other thing is that when we say every student learns different, one of the things that we don't mean, non-examples, is that they're a kinesthetic learner or they're an
Oh
auditory
yeah, no.
learner
Good
or
point.
they're a visual learner. Because one, there's no research that supports that. And two, what I've recognized is like there are instances in which there needs to be kinesthetic learning done when it comes to like dribbling a basketball or it comes to learning how to swim. Of course, you can't just read a book and then go out there and throw them in the pool. That doesn't work like that. But when it comes to the modes in which you are learning, everybody somewhat learns like in the same ways when it comes to those modes, the visual, auditory, blah blah blah,
Right.
and that could help. But there's nobody that's like, oh, I'm a visual learner and blah blah blah. Like you can have your preferences all
Right.
day, every day. And I think that we should try to help people get what they prefer. But it's not like you can't learn auditory if you think that you're a visual learner. It doesn't
Right.
work like that.
Right. A good example of this that I like to use because, I'll have a student like come and say something like that occasionally. I'll be like, okay, well, I have an auditory processing delay, which sometimes I mask really well. But auditorily wise, like if I'm having a rough spoon day, I always have subtitles on my shows and movies because
Hmm.
that's just, it helps my brain to give a break. But when it comes to like face-to-face conversations, sometimes it does take a lot out of me. Um,
Hmm.
that doesn't mean I don't process auditory information. It just means that looking at things while I'm talking makes it easier. It takes some of the bandwidth off of me. But it doesn't mean that I like don't learn that way or whatever.
Yeah,
And, it doesn't mean I'm a visual learner. Well, I just
exactly.
prefer to read it. Or
Yeah,
if I'm speaking it, also reading it. But that's an accommodation as well. So, you
absolutely.
know, everyone's just different in their preferences. But I think that's where that difference comes. Like it's preference based. I'm different and like I prefer to read it. I'm different and I prefer to hear it. Um, but yeah, that's a really
Exactly.
good point to bring up.
Yeah, because for my undergrads and even some of my master's students that were in special education, and sometimes it was the undergrads that were just in general ed that had to take that one special education
Mhm.
class. I uh, I always played this video that I made talking about there's no evidence that supports there's any such thing as kinesthetic, auditory, blah blah blah
Yeah.
learners. And then like they've even like these I'm going to call them pseudosciences scientists. Sorry, these pseudoscientists have even broken it up into like 238 different types of learning styles. And it's
Wow.
like when you become arbitrary, you can slice the pie as many times as you want because you're just making arbitrary distinctions between things that don't exist. So, these are hypothetical constructs that individuals design and create to try to explain the world, which is understandable, but it's harmful when you say that because then people think that they can't learn a certain way.
Right.
It's like, no, you can, you know. I had this mutual who thinks that she says she was diagnosed or identified with like dyscalculia,
Mm,
and she thinks that she because of it she'll always have a fourth grade math level, and I'm like, I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is, but I'm sure you haven't had a precision teacher come in and try to help you build fluency,
right.
and it's kind of an excuse as to why she would never need to try. And I feel like we do a disservice to our learners when we identify them with certain learning disabilities and then don't give them the opportunity to try. We just
Right.
say, oh, instead of like I had a student where they were going to give him an accommodation for a note taker because he was a slow note taker. And I was like, well, I don't think anybody's ever tried to help him build his fluency in letter writing. So
Right.
I literally went in
That's a
there in
skill.
one day and helped him build his fluency. We were just like, okay, look, we're gonna play a game. We're gonna try to write the letter A to Z, and then once you get to Z, go back to A and keep going for this 1 minute. When I tell you to stop, stop. Okay, you got 25. Okay, next time try to beat 25. Boom, he got 32. And then we just built the fluency. All of a sudden, he's now able to keep up and he doesn't need that
Right.
note taker because he was given research based instruction to be able to catch up to his same aged peers. And it's like, if nobody knew how to do that, nobody came in. If I didn't have a sub case and I was just some dude, some behavior therapist or behavior technician
Mhm.
interested in precision teaching, he would have had a note taker and he would have never built that skill.
Right.
Maybe he would have, but I mean, he likely wouldn't have. So it's like when sometimes a combination can mask the opportunity to learn a skill. And I really worry about that because it's just easier sometimes in some people's lives to just give the accommodation instead of saying, hey, like, can we figure out a way to help this kid? Like, generally, usually, they haven't tried to figure out a way to teach the kid the skill, or
Right.
they don't know how to teach the kid the skill. So they're like, well, let's just throw an accommodation at it, and then sometimes even the accommodation isn't helpful enough, you know? I
I
feel like I'm in
completely
murky
agree.
water, but I'm trying to explain it very specifically and very like
Right.
fully.
I can't remember what we were talking about in one of the previous recordings, but we were talking about antecedents versus the behavior being replaced. And I
Hmm.
think that that goes to accommodations as well. It's like using accommodations, and I'm sure we could, you know, do a whole discussion on this in and of itself. And I think we should talk about accommodations because they're so prominent.
Yeah.
Um, and especially as like a disability advocate, I feel like it's important for us to discuss. Um,
Hmm.
using them as antecedents, perfectly fine. But once it
Hmm.
replaces the behavior, like the note taking, for instance, at that point, there is definitely a disservice being provided. Now, I could argue that it's a product of the system of education because we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, we don't have the person power to
Yeah.
support that individualized instruction if that student doesn't have an IEP or if that student doesn't have, private pay or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
So like it's a big hole in the system to see things like that happen. And the replacement is simply a band-aid. It's not
Hmm.
actually like getting a medicine for it and like actually working through it. And but it's just let's just put a band-aid on it. And then once the student's not in our system, it's not our problem anymore. It's
Yeah.
easier. It's escape reinforcement, that's all
Yeah.
it is.
And to even harp on it even more, it's not the student's problem or fault. It's the
Oh no,
educational system with which they are learning in, and
absolutely.
it's their problem and fault, and it should be them who fixes it. But instead
Yep.
of fixing it, they're putting that band-aid on it. So
The students are
that
victims.
exactly, exactly. And oftentimes even the teachers are victims too because
Mhm.
they're not always taught the best evidence-based practices to be able to teach their learn. Like I can't tell you how many teachers I've seen teach that don't know the science of reading and they've been teaching
Yeah.
reading for 20 years and it's like I don't know why we have so many kids with dyslexia. And it's like, well, um what kind of whole language? Okay. I mean, like, how are we teaching this kid, So like one of the things that I want to do in our ABA program is do a class on literacy and how to teach
Oh
literacy
yeah. That'd
because
be great.
an ABA is not only working with kids with autism. We have so much we can do and so much we know. So it would be really cool to delve into some of those other aspects of ABA just so that we can get a more full picture because
Mhm.
I remember that SAFMED that behavior is the activity of living organisms. So everything that falls under that umbrella of the activity of living organisms is within our scope, right? And then we just need to be able to learn how to be able to, manipulate variables to change the probability of the behavior occurring to the desired levels.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting because it ties back into the publication process too, because when we replace the behavior and we basically excuse the learner as the victim, rightfully so, and we
Hmm.
say, you don't have to do it, it's cool. What we're also not doing is preparing for future contingencies where that accommodation will not be as graciously provided. And like I said, I feel we should just talk about this in a whole episode, but
Yeah,
um
let's write it down. Let's do that.
the publication sphere is no different. And so like
Yeah.
when I talk to students who are doing like research projects or they're, excited about possibly publishing, I'm direct with them and I don't sugarcoat it because the publication sphere tends to be glamorized. I don't know if that's the right word, in a way that is not realistic. And so students come in and they're like, I'll just do my dissertation, then I'll publish it. And it's like, okay, that's great, but you're not talking about all of the variance in between getting that dissertation done and all the crap that you're going to deal with to see it
Yeah.
get published. And I'm talking like good studies that I personally do not see an issue with getting published in a journal of any kind, but I know the fight that they're going to have to go through. And that's why a lot of research falls through the cracks, I think, because we set this
Hmm.
false expectation that publication isn't necessarily going to be easy, but it's not as hard as it actually is. I'm
Yeah.
going to say maybe it's like you and I are not white men or whatever, but like it's not easy in any way,
No.
shape, or form to get published. And maybe my
No.
research is crap. I don't know. But like someone's accepted it, so it must not be total crap.
I know it's
But
not crap. I've seen
that's but
it.
that's important to tell students.
Yeah.
It's like that's good. It's not going to be easy, and I hope
Hmm.
you're ready to deal with this for like a year of your life,
Yeah.
probably, because you're going to be trying to fight those criticisms and do all these things, and it still goes back to the gatekeeping. It's like,
Hmm.
how do we prepare students for that mindset of that resilience? Because that's what it takes, is just being obnoxious and annoying and not giving up, ultimately.
Exactly. Exactly. And interestingly enough, two things I think help with that. One is being a reviewer yourself. We had the
Hmm.
opportunity as PhD students at my program to be reviewers. So we kind of were able to step into that role and see what it's like. And we were able to go
Right.
into those shoes and it's like, okay, now I understand what it's like from this side. I think another thing that helps is video games. Because in video games, a lot of the times it's really tough. You
Oh,
die,
yeah.
you got to try again, and you get frustrated, and you have to have that resiliency. And I've seen studies talk about how video games help build that resiliency. And you need that when it comes to publishing. It's not always the smartest people who publish a lot.
Oh,
Sometimes it's
no.
just the most resilient, tenacious individuals who just won't give up. It's a marathon, just like a PhD. It's not about being the smartest, it's about being able to get through that marathon.
And
Um,
paying for it.
and pay for it unless it's paid. So it's really like that when it comes to publishing, because like when if you want to publish a book, you really don't have to have any credentials or
No.
really any reviewers or really anything. So that's why a lot of times when I read books, I was like, I'm going to spend my time reading books that have a lot of information, have a lot of
Right.
citations, are like nonfiction, and no, and I do have my fiction books that I read because I read a lot of comics. But when
Right.
it comes to like taking time, I got all these books here, and when you're ready, I would love to pivot over to like what's the last book you read, or you want to talk
Oh,
about a real
absolutely.
quick
Yeah.
a book, that we are reading or did read. I think that's really interesting because I want to increase the like we read. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We do read, yes.
Yeah.
It's important. I love that point too, because we were talking about, topics on what we want to discuss. And I'm trying to currently vet books about grammar and structure and classism and all that. And I'm
Hmm.
having a heck of a time finding what I, not that I'm trying to cherry pick my information, but I want to make sure that it's a very well-rounded perspective on
Hmm.
with references and
Hmm.
resources and all of that, because otherwise it's just another man's opinion, like I don't need another man's opinion. I'm tired of it. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm
One
at.
book that I like is Black Feminist Thought by Patricia
Ooh,
Hill Collins. Um, I think that that's a really good one. It'll really help you with the intersectionality parts, and
noted.
it's it's really good because like one of the things that I've learned from Black feminism that they've been recognizing for a long time, which
Hmm.
I'm gonna definitely write an article about it. I'm actually working about it on a manuscript for it, where it's
Awesome.
like, you know how they say black magic or black market or
Yes. It's
if
always a
they
bad
black,
thing.
yeah, black is bad,
Hmm.
whereas white is
The black
good,
sheep of
and
the
then
family.
exactly. So then if you use I like contingency adduction or contingent. Yeah, some people like RFT or stimulus
Hmm.
equivalents. But if you have that thing, it's like if you attach black to person, that's bad, and then you white
Right.
to person is good. Then that means black person bad, white person good. So I mean, it's very simple. So one of the things that they do in their literature, Black feminists, is they'll take that power back by saying instead of enlightening and darkening, and that's supposed to be a good
Hmm.
thing. So they're using that language. They recognize those
Yeah.
contingencies within our language, and they're shaping their writing to shift those contingencies. And you won't see a behavior analyst talk about that usually because you have to go read Black feminism to learn
Right.
about that. Then you can
And
put it
most
back
people don't
into
seek
your
it out.
limbs. Exactly, exactly. We put it back into our behavior analytic or behavior scientific lens, and then we can clearly see these contingencies and how they operate and how a black cat is bad or, all these things.
My God.
So it's like it
Yeah,
goes so deep.
it
And,
really does.
yeah,
No,
so
and it's
highly
it's so
recommend that.
funny. Yeah, like but once you know, you know, and it becomes so
Hmm.
obvious. And
Hmm.
it's like, just pick up a damn book and read it, and then you'll have this like tint to your view of the world and just be like, wow, it's been here the whole time, and
Hmm.
I'm perpetuating it. And you should feel
Yeah,
bad about that. Like,
yeah. And I have this thing where I'm like, you don't know because you don't read, and I get mad. And then it's like,
right.
okay, well then let's go back to why
But
don't
the
they
learner's
read?
always right.
Exactly. So
So,
one, why don't they read? And then two, if you tell people to read, what are they going to read? Because
right.
there are books they can pick up that it's like, oh no, don't read that. It's like, but you told
Yeah.
me to
Oh,
read, but
totally.
not that. So it's like we have to build a community environment in which reading is reinforcing. That's one.
Hmm.
And then two, we have to shape that environment so that they're reading the things that are going to help them. I've learned a lot about recently. I'm reading a lot of this book about propaganda, so
Ooh,
much
that sounds
propaganda.
interesting.
Yeah, this book right here by a guy named Dr. Jared Abel, The Myth and
Okay.
Propaganda of Black Buying Power, Media, Race, and Economics. It actually has a PDF, which is free to download, if I think only if you have
Oh, so
a
it's
university email.
freely available.
Yeah, so it's either only if you have university email or it's just an article as well. So it's second edition. I highly recommend it. I'm learning a lot. So much about they say, if the black dollar circulated within the black community, it's like, well, you can segregate people, but you can't segregate money. And it's a whole
I haven't
big
even
myth that
heard
was
that.
created.
Wow.
Yeah, it's this myth that was actually created by Richard Nixon to quell rebellious black leaders into submission to being like, oh, let me make you a black capitalist and support black capitalism instead of trying to overthrow the actual structures and systems that are harming you. So now you're
God.
just like part of the system, part of the structure, but we're still going to actually exclude you in different systemic ways.
Right.
So it's really nefarious. And in the black community, you hear, get your LLC, be an entrepreneur, and it's like you're all just listening to this BS capitalist stuff
Hmm.
that's really going to perpetuate the systemic equalities and not making us
Right.
actually identify the systematic problems and then fight to change them. And it completely
Right.
worked.
I was gonna say, and it reminds me of talks about Reagan as well, who
Yeah.
was just another
Oh my God.
terrible white guy, who the war on
He in
drugs.
hell.
And like,
If
I
it exists.
read, yeah, I read a really great book on intersectionality that talked about like policy and stuff like that. And Ronald Reagan was notorious for criminalizing cocaine and
Yeah.
cocaine usage. Now, the thing that really got me that I didn't know that I learned recently was that for powdered cocaine in a small amount was not like punishable by jail time.
Yeah.
However, if you had the crack
Crack.
version
Yep.
or the cheaper, the one that people who are lower income, generally read black
Hmm.
individuals will have, guess what? Jail time. automatic and
Yeah.
like long sentences. Like if you assault a woman, you get less time than somebody who
Yeah.
has possession. And so like these white people who are, snorting crystal or not snorting crystal. I'm not a drug user clearly because
Yeah.
I don't speak the language.
Yeah.
But people who are
Coke.
using the powder
Yeah.
expensive white rich people stuff in LA are not getting any sort of consequence for it. And so, like, that is Reagan, thanks to Reagan, along with all sorts of garbage. And, like, don't get me started
Yeah.
on Thomas Jefferson. Like, that guy is just, oh,
Oh,
the worst.
terrible. Two things. One, yeah, there's a great quote. It was a terrible quote, but he says, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be black. So what we did was all the things that were associated with that community that we
Yep,
illegalized so that
criminalized
we could
it.
be able to criminalize and then put them into jail. Drug
Hmm.
use is a mental health and physical health problem. It's not a criminality problem. Let's just, recognize that.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, I saw someone talk about how Hamilton has made slave owners like household nice names, and it's like pretty much everybody in the show Hamilton were like slave owning
Hmm.
terrible people, Sally
Yep.
Hemings, all that stuff. But the show Hamilton, people love it. I just want to be in the room when it happens, type stuff, and it's like okay, we're just gonna it's almost like the propaganda. I don't know if you've heard that
Hmm.
phrase
I
that kind
have.
of is
Hmm.
permeated. Like when I was reading this book, it just talks about how like it was intentional that after World War II, there was a lot of propaganda. There was a lot of
Hmm.
propaganda to associate capitalism with democracy, to make those two connect, to make it seem like if you were anti-capitalist, you were anti-democratic. And
Right.
then there are problems with
You must be
democracy on its
red.
own. Exactly, exactly. The Red Scare, and it's the McCarthyism is still here. Wow,
Oh
we
my
have
God, it's
strayed
so.
far, but it's all really connected. I
Well, and I
promise.
mean, I would actually argue there's still Jim Crow going on, but
Yeah,
that's just,
yeah. But there's a book called The
yeah,
New Jim Crow that talks about how it
it's
happens
on my
on
list.
online spaces. Yeah, yeah, by Ruha Benjamin, I believe. Yeah, I did like a 4 video series on it on my Instagram. You have to scroll way far back. I hate the way that I used to be able to have like little
It's
like
frustrating.
files and stuff. Whatever. But yeah, no, it's a really good book. And the
Oh,
problem
good.
is when it came out, it was great, but now it's outdated because as soon like the speed with which technology advances, I think
Hmm.
it came out in like 2020. And I wouldn't say it's outdated, but it tells a story of the way that the internet was then. And then
Right.
now there are additional things that like you need to update it. You need to create a new
Yeah.
preface. There needs to be some additional chapters because there's a whole lot of other BS that's occurred within the time from its publication to now
Oh,
that
hell
should be
yeah, there
addressed
is.
in the book. And that's just the way that it goes. Medical apartheid is another book by Harriet A. Washington
Hmm.
that I think needs an update as well. And so we read. I need y'all to catch these catch these hands though, catch these
Yeah.
books.
Well, and we'll put them in our resources too. Like I
Yeah,
listed the books that I've kind of recently read that have really helped frame my thinking around some of these topics too. And throw yours on
yeah,
there too, and we'll do
perfect.
that. And as a musical theater enthusiast, I'm so glad that you brought up Hamilton because I have paid to see it one time and I have no desire to pay to see it again. Now, I'm also a Disney adult, and so it's on Disney Plus,
Same.
so I will watch it occasionally to have it in the background because the music does slap. I'll be
Yes.
real. But it it bothers me because, you have glamorized all of this crap. And not only that, and I love the idea. So I'm kind of like a conflict on it. Now, I
Mhm.
100% agree with you on everything that you've said about it. Musical theater is one of my special interests. I don't know that you
Mhm.
realize you just tapped into that, but like here the hell we go. Um, I love the representation of diversity on the stage because it has been very not present in Broadway for years and years. It's a very privileged space. Um, it's expensive to get tickets to an actual Broadway show. When Lin-Manuel brought Hamilton to the masses on Disney Plus, it was a big freaking deal because
Mhm.
now the theater was finally accessible to everybody. who had
Hmm.
Disney Plus, it's a little more accessible. Now, granted, you still need a subscription. So, like, I struggle with that. Lin-Manuel does a really great job of painting a lot of diversity into the stories. Like, I love Encanto. It is one of my
Hmm.
favorite Disney animated movies because, once again, the music slaps. It's amazing.
Hmm.
But it tells this beautiful story about breaking generational cycles and trauma and
Hmm.
all of that. But with Hamilton, where it really gets me, in addition to the areas that you've defined, Thomas Jefferson is generally played by a black man. And Thomas Jefferson is one of the most assimilative, I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. Um, Basically, one of the books that I read was Thomas Jefferson is one of the first people to say, I have a black friend. And
Hmm.
no description will ever top that to me because when you read about that vile human being and his like fence sitting, like, oh, I don't like slavery, but I need the slave labor to actually fund my empire because I'm the equivalent of like $2 million in debt. And so I need slave labor to sit on with my privilege. Yeah, cool, whatever. But why are you now talking about like other people shouldn't have slaves? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? You fathered many children with one of your slaves that you failed to provide for, that you failed to acknowledge, and you just kind of, well, but I can't. It's not part of society. Okay, get some
Hmm.
balls, man. Like, what the
Yeah.
hell? But to have a black man play that part, it really sits poorly with me. It's
Hmm.
like, if nothing else, that man should be more of a villain. We need to make him what he is. I don't know. Like I struggle with the whole I want representation, but maybe not this way.
Yeah, and yeah, I think
That
that
was a
one of
lot.
the
I'm sorry.
ways. No, 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 it's good. I think that you brought up something that I didn't even think about. One of the ways that we have to conceptualize it, especially as you talk about it like that, is Hamilton is low key propaganda
Mhm.
for the founding fathers and
Yeah,
all
it
those
is.
enslavers. Is propaganda to make them look good and desirable and okay. And
Hmm.
then people will say, "Oh, well, he was just a product of his time." It's like not when John Brown existed, because
Right.
John Brown killed them all and he burned everybody down and all that stuff. So I mean,
People have
there were
literally been
people
saying these things this whole time, but they've been erased.
exactly. And also, if you don't know that, you don't read. I mean,
Right.
it's really that simple.
Right.
It's like either you're willfully ignorant, you're weaponizing incompetence, or you just don't, or you're just ignorant. So
Right.
it's one of those three. Pick which one that you want, and we're gonna run with it because it's literally just propaganda. And when you understand what propaganda really is, it's like I started to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine like right before the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, and then as soon as all that happened, I was like, I can't. So every time
I've never even
it's
tried
it's
it.
been yeah, yeah, no, every time I see like cops on screen or whatever, I'm just like I can't, like the Reno 911. I used to like it when I was a kid because it is
It
hilarious
makes fun of
and
cops.
and it makes
And
fun
that's
of
what we
cops.
need.
Exactly. So when you see it's like, oh, cop always good, um criminalized person always bad, with no
Right.
context as to why they're doing what they're doing, because for the most part, if you rob, loot, and steal, it's because you don't have something. If you
Hmm.
had, you wouldn't need to go get it,
Right.
you
100%.
know. So I mean, it's just systems communities. I don't know how long we've been going, if we need to cut and then start again.
Yeah, we might have one full here and then we can kind of pick up where we left off.
Okay.
Well, let's do that. Let me